So let's do one more of these. So I was finishing up saying about the Gnostic Christians. Basically, they wanted to be indie. They were, more about being individual and not being controlled by the church. But that might have been a reason they weren't as successful as the church, because the church had more organization, more resources, stuff like that. And they also broke more sharply with Judaism, whereas the church was maybe a little bit more synced up with Jewish religion, more continuity there. Okay, let's look at some more here. The Council of Nicaea, who organized it, when it happened, what it decided. So the Council of Nicaea happened in the 300s. It was organized by Constantine, and basically what it was deciding what Christians should believe, because there was a lot of debate on the subject, actually, way more than there is today, even. Um, the sort of nature of Jesus. Who was he? Was he all God? Was he all human? Was he a human being possessed by God? What's the deal? Today we feel like we have an answer. He's all human, he's all God. It's all happening at the same time. But that's the kind of stuff that was decided in councils like this. Up until this point, there was a lot of debate. It also decided, what Christians would say as the statement of their belief. I believe in the Father. I believe in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Things like that. Those were the kinds of things they would hash out. And so that's why the Council of Nicaea was important, because it was Christians trying to figure things like this out. And they had a few more councils after that as well to keep working on these details. But that kind of stuff had to be decided. Okay, let's move on to Buddhism. So what's the deal with Buddhism? What are the goals of a Buddhist? Basically, the goal of a Buddhist is to achieve enlightenment and thereby be freed from a word that people have translated as either dissatisfaction or suffering, which kind of connote different things here. But basically, life has an inherent satisfaction problem, and Buddhists are going to solve it. And the way that you solve it is by breaking through to this place where you are free from that kind of suffering or dissatisfaction. Someone who achieved this while sitting under the Bodhi tree, tree of meditation, and Four Noble Truths. There's dissatisfaction everywhere in life, or another way to put it is all life is suffering, but that sounds more angsty. But basically, this, we all experience suffering. We're all familiar with that. This is kind of self-evident. 2, there's an origin to suffering, and the origin of suffering is being attached to things, being attached to what we want, what we're afraid of, all these things that are temporary and are going to pass away in the world, because nothing in the world lasts forever. 3 is the path to escape suffering, letting go of these things that we're attached to. This will create a state of freedom and peace, which is sometimes known as nirvana, sometimes known as enlightenment. And there's a way to achieve this, which is following these rules and ideas that the Buddha laid out, what he called the Eightfold Path, which is sort of ways of living to ensure that you are going to have things figured out, that you are going to be free from these attachments and these desires. Okay, let's see. Concept of enlightenment. Enlightenment is kind of this knowledge that you have about the way the universe is, and this knowledge of sort of your freedom. Nirvana is another word for that state that you're in once you achieve enlightenment. Once you achieve your knowledge, you're in the freedom of nirvana. You don't experience suffering, and then samsara is experiencing this suffering, being stuck in the world and being stuck in this cycle of rebirth, which is a difference between Buddhism and Hinduism. Well, not quite. Okay, Buddhists and Hindus both believe in reincarnation, that you go through a cycle of rebirth. But Buddhists want to escape it and say, let's stop this and escape to nirvana and be free forever. Whereas Hindus just kind of accept it as a matter of course. Hindus also believe in the self. The individual soul is part of a greater whole. And Buddhists are more inclined to say, what soul? It's an illusion. There's nothing really there. And that's part of what enlightenment is about. Let's see. Major divisions of Buddhism and what they believe. You've got the Theravada Buddhism and the Mahayana Buddhism. Gonna skip ahead in the PowerPoint here. The Theravada Buddhism is mostly the traditionalist Buddhism, sees Buddha more as kind of a hero and a teacher, and is like, its philosophy is, hey, enlightenment, if you want it, you can go after it. Whereas Mahayana Buddhism is all about helping everyone to achieve enlightenment. Everyone in the universe is going to get there someday. That's the goal of the Mahayana Buddhists. And that's why they call themselves the big boat. The big boat that's going to get everybody across to the other side. And that's what the Buddha is trying to achieve in their view. And for them, the Buddha is more frequently more like a god. He's going to save you from the experience of suffering. And in Mahayana Buddhism, bodhisattvas are very important. These are these enlightened beings, people who have achieved enlightenment already, and as a result, kind of have these godlike powers, and they come back to help others. They don't come back because they're stuck. They come back because they choose to, and they want to help other people achieve enlightenment. And the Buddha is like that too. He keeps coming back to help other people achieve enlightenment. And, people have been experiencing thousands of reincarnations, but they also choose to experience reincarnations as these helpers, these bodhisattvas. That's a big thing that's unique in Mahayana Buddhism. And Mahayana Buddhism is more the Buddhism of China and Japan. Let's see. The feudal system. Okay, what's the feudal system? Basically, you got your peasants, your knights, and your kings, or alternatively, your lords. Let me see if I can pull that up here. But this is a big part of the medieval world, is the peasants, knights, kings system, more or less. Sometimes it's not a king. Sometimes it's just someone who's royalty, but a little bit less powerful kind of royalty. Load it on up. Okay, what have we got going on here? Okay, so here's our chart. So the kings provide fiefs, which is a unit of land. They provide a bunch of land to the vassal knights. The knights who are their vassals serve them. And the knights provide protection for the serfs, keep them from being invaded, defend them from their enemies. In return, the peasants work on the land of the knights and give them a whole bunch of food. So the knights have extra food, but the knights will defend the peasants. And the peasants also have to be part of the knight's army. But the knight, he has cool stuff. He has like a horse, and he has armor, and he goes riding off to battle as a knight in shining armor. And then the knights have to provide military service to the kings. So they'll round up all the peasants, make them their local army, and then go join the king for whatever war he's doing. And so this is fealty, the loyalty of the knight to his king. So this is, this three-tiered system seems to dominate this society. And you see it in medieval Japan as well, something very similar to this. And basically it's a comfortable arrangement in a lot of ways, although I would say the peasants are getting the rawest end of the deal here because they have to work really hard. And the knights basically only have to really work hard on being knights. Let's see, what else have we got here? Let's talk about some broader topics. Let's see. Were the Middle Ages a dark age or not? Well, this is pretty up for debate. I think it depends on what factors you're going to stress. They definitely seem to have less of the intellectual and scientific stuff that the Greeks and Romans were doing. But that doesn't disappear completely. You've still got monks copying out some of those Greek and Roman philosophy texts into Latin. It's just that it's a very small percentage of people who were able to read them. But to be fair, it was kind of a small percentage in Roman times too, because not everyone was taught to read and write. So, it's a difference of degree. But there is less new scientific knowledge going on in the Middle Ages. But on the other hand, it might not be a bad time to live. In both time periods, you're basically a farmer most of the time. So that's not that different. Who you're paying taxes to is not that different. Is basically the only difference, but that doesn't affect your life that very much. There's less trade, but there's still some trade networks going on, it seems. Um, Europe is different than other parts of the world. China and the Islamic caliphates, they're doing pretty well in terms of financial success and intellectual stuff, science and whatnot. In the caliphate, they're studying the phases of the moon and the stars. They're naming the moons of Jupiter the ones they can see through their telescopes anyway. They're doing some cool stuff. And in China, they're inventing water clocks and pedometers and cannons and things like that. So it's pretty different from what's going on in Europe, where things are very much the same. Things continue with the church being sort of the dominant power, and the feudal system lasting for a really long time. So life doesn't change as rapidly. And so the things that we modern people are as excited about, they don't happen as much in the Middle Ages. But it doesn't seem like it was necessarily a bad time to live. One of the reasons you might call it dark is because we don't have any of the writing. It's, quote, dark to us. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad time. Dark in the sense of dismal, which is the way people used to talk about, like it was a really dismal time. But honestly, you've got wars, that's for sure, but you had wars in various time periods of history. You've got the plague, but that only comes at the very end. So it's not quite the stereotype that we have in our images. But I think there's a lot of room to argue in different directions here. So I'll be curious to see on the test what you guys think is the most important stuff to stress. Is the Middle Ages a good time to be alive? Would you want to be alive in that time period? And how does that compare to the rest of the world? Let's see. Oh yeah, we want to talk about how Buddhists, Taoists, and Confucians interacted. And you can see some evidence of this in Chinese art and literature. So what did Buddhists and Confucians think of each other? Well, the Buddhists kind of thought Confucians were too focused on, making the crops grow and organizing things and being obsessed over how well you did on the government exams. Whereas the Confucians thought that the Buddhists were kind of not respectful enough of society and not like working hard enough for society because they were going off in their woods to be monks, and not respectful enough of their family members because the Buddhist separates from his family members, whereas the Confucian is all about taking care of his family members. But, they did get along in a lot of ways. A lot of them are trying to figure out how to be good people. That seems to be one of the sort of central ideas to all of them. And so they work things out and get along a lot of the time. And one way of reconciling those Buddhist and Confucian ideas is in the story of the monk who rescues his... if we have a second here, up. Let's see here. Monk, where are you, monk? Yeah, so this is a popular story that was told around the time and it continued to be retold in later generations. But this monk, his mother ended up in Buddhist hell because she led a bad life, and so she had a bad reincarnation. But he decides he's going to do a good deed and rescue her. And he prays for her and gets all his friends to pray for her and ensures better reincarnation for her. And she's reincarnated in a better way and she's saved. And so it brings together those two things, being a Buddhist, but also you can be a Buddhist and still be really loyal to your family. That's what this story is trying to say. So that was one, way that people might reconcile them. You could see the Taoist ideas of the immortals, people who are really in touch with the way of the universe, could be very similar to the Bodhisattvas. That's another thing. The Zen Buddhists seem to draw a lot on the ideas of the Taoists. You can see, like in this work of art, people comparing the different religions and trying to figure out, how they should be interpreted, and trying to weigh the different ideas against each other. And art that expresses ideas that are common to all of them, like the Buddhist ideas of emptiness is also an idea you find in Taoism, and Taoists and Confucians are very interested in nature. And so you get these silk paintings in the Song period of these huge open landscapes that have a lot of emptiness in them and focus on nature way more than they focus on people. Kind of to say, in comparison with the universe, we're pretty